Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 85. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has liked, shared, commented, who has subscribed to the show. Your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. Also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment provides first-class weight rooms and has earned an exceptional reputation of providing the finest quality design and customer service. Being a direct manufacturer, the team at Samson brings full customization capabilities and not only branding, but in custom equipment needed to execute your next project. From racks, barbells, and plates to dumbbells, benches, flooring, storage, and much more, Samson equipment is durable and made to order from premium grade materials, all built from scratch, start to finish. Samson equipment provides professional weight room solutions for all your strength and conditioning needs. See the Samson standard for yourself and learn more at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to use promo code strength_game at checkout to receive 10% off your next order at cerberusstrength.com. And this week's episode, I am joined by Bryce Taylor. Bryce is an instructor of physical education and an assistant strength and conditioning coach at the United States Air Force Academy. There, he leads training for the women's soccer, wrestling, and men's and women's gymnastics teams, in addition to being a course director for physical education, advanced physical development courses for the Air Force cadets. Prior to arriving at the Air Force Academy in 2018, Taylor served as an assistant strength coach at Alabama State University for 2 years. He got his start in the coaching profession as an intern coach at his alma mater, the University of Nebraska at Kearney, and has been a personal trainer at multiple facilities, including Sterling's Team Speed, Metro Fitness, and Abercrombie. A former college football cornerback at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, Taylor embraced the weight room, leading the team in multiple performance testing categories. Following his playing career, he still takes that love for the weight room and continues to train regularly. Nowadays, he still trains like an athlete, often running his team's programs ahead of time, as well as incorporating a lot of calisthenics and gymnastics type work into his own training. Additionally, he has previously competed in ultramarathons and still enjoys trail running. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Bryce Taylor. What's going on, everybody? Today, I'm excited. I am joined by Coach Bryce Taylor. How's it going today, man?
Oh, it's going great, man. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to speak with you. I know we've been trying to, get together for a while now, so it's finally happening.
No, I know we've been working on it for a bit. We got to meet a couple years ago when I was up in the Colorado area. We had a wrestling tournament to kind of take part in. So it's awesome to get you on the show and catch up a little bit and see what everything you guys got in store over there at Air Force Academy. But really want to touch on how you got first started in the strength game, like what sports you played growing up, what your training kind of started as, and really for me, I want to see what you're doing now because it's super interesting. So kind of touch on that stuff. Like, how'd you get involved in the strength game, man?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, when I was young, I played just about every single sport, and I think I was really attached to football. That's what my dad always watched. That's what my brother played. So for some reason, I gravitated towards playing football. And the funny thing is what got me into more strength conditioning. I think I knew I wanted to play college football, but I knew I wanted to be a strength coach, like before I even got to college. So, and the reason that is actually because of my father-in-law, which I think is actually a pretty cool story. Dude is my mentor. I've known him since freshman year in high school. Me and his daughter, was my wife now, were actually started dating in freshman year in high school. So it was just kind of interesting how it all started. She was an absolute stud athlete. She plays Division I soccer at Arizona State. But freshman year in high school, she's just like, "Oh yeah, my dad's a sports performance coach. You should come work out." And that was probably one of the best at the moment. It was a bad decision, but it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made. Because man, he just whooped up on me, and it was I was questioning, my abilities at the time, but the dude just absolutely transformed, I guess, who I was as an athlete, and not only that, just transformed my idea of what a coach was. So I mean, I trained with him specifically for football. It's really all I did in high school, but I trained with him all the way through high school, and then all the way through college as well. So when I came back for spring break, fall break, like I was hitting him up. Sterling's team speed. The dude is an absolute guru. He owns his own business, and he's overcome so much. But he's the one that really got me into training and showing me the importance of it. And that just took off when I got to college. I wasn't the best football player, but I was definitely what some people would call like weight room All American. Like that's where I lived, and that's how I made my way. That's how I got on the travel trips. So I really owe that spark and that motivation to him, and that's really what made me want to become a strength coach in the end.
That's cool. That actually, like at that age and starting to learn what it really is to be a coach before you get into college. I think nowadays that's starting to become the norm a little bit more, where people understand it's a profession. You can own your own gym. There's so many different routes you could take strength conditioning to sports performance. But yeah, you got exposed to it at an early age too, and really kind of solidified what you wanted to do. I'm sure too, when you were playing football, like what you said, you were a weight room All-American, and that's kind of your ticket to what got you on travel trips, probably playing on the field too. And I'm sure you can attest to it, that like that type of training is what improved your performance more so. But no, that's really cool to see that someone sparked your interest so much in that. And I'm sure you owe a lot to him and that kind of upbringing to what got you there. So I mean, what really piqued your interest? Because he was in the private sector, had his own facility and everything. What kind of pulled you towards the collegiate side?
Yeah. So really, what he did, it's funny, man. Sterling Joseph. He started off. He was working security at Oppenheimer, and through that first recession, just like had to transition just to personal training, and he was working in a gym part time, and then took on full time, and he just built an incredible following. So even though I trained with my football team in high school, we had a solid probably 8 guys that just attached themselves to what he was doing, and like I was so close to those dudes. Just the stuff we went through, the way he pushed us, the way he motivated us, and that was my like first real team environment where I felt like everybody was bought in, and what he had created, that was all him. He created buy-in from all of us, and I guess I can't really say why that translated to college, because he managed to create that environment in the private sector. But something about that team environment, something about the team culture, was what drew me to the college side of it. He created that somehow. Ended up building his own business off of that. And I was like, I can do that in a college setting. That's something I want to be the catalyst for.
That's awesome. Yeah, it. It's kind of surprising too. I think that's what people draws. I don't think it's surprising, but it's what draws people to college is that team atmosphere and the culture that's kind of surrounded, regardless of what sport it is. What do you think is kind of missing? Like obviously, like you said, that he was be able to create that in the private sector. What is it like that kind of drives that team atmosphere, that culture, that someone that wants to add that to a private sector is like the catalyst to start that, like to really kind of bring that into a private setting, in your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, I do think it is difficult. It's hard to explain, but it was almost like because he's a very old school coach. Like he's old school to the max, but and when I say that, I mean in all the positive ways. I do feel like there's negative connotations sometimes that might come with that. But when we did something as a team, all our training was objective based. It was team based. We have to get through it as a unit, which definitely plays a big part into football. Being a team sport, being a whistle sport, all those things. But everything we did, if we didn't accomplish the mission, we failed as a team. If we accomplished it was because we got each other through. And for me, I feel like that was what the biggest attachment was we had, even though like we didn't play together, we just trained together. And then on top of that, I think, you can be hard, but like as a coach, but for some reason, it was like he believed in me more than I believed in myself. I don't necessarily know exactly what the answer is to showing a kid or an athlete like that you do believe in them more. I think there's steps you can take, but like overall, I think you can push somebody and be tough on them, yet just show them that they can do things they didn't think they could do. If you believe in them more than they believe in themselves, we're doing something.
Yeah, for sure. I think I forget where I heard it, but someone told me that like a mentor or a coach sees you for what you can be versus what you are at that moment. Even though you're trying to meet an athlete where they are, like you see the potential in them. And like you said, so oftentimes when that athlete does not see them himself, maybe just yet, or just hasn't presented themselves, but your goal is to try to bring out that potential and drive that stuff forward. So that's cool that kind of facilitated in you. Like he brought that out in you, and he kind of showed you the ropes in terms of coaching, and now you've kind of made that into your career. Now you've been at Air Force for since like 2018. You've been at other universities as well. You've been a personal trainer. How I want to kind of get into it a little bit, because you have a unique job. Not only are you the strength coach like for multiple teams at a service academy, which is in and of itself a lot of work and very unique, but you're also you're an instructor for physical education at the academy. Can you kind of explain for someone that does not know like military academies, what your kind of role looks like, or maybe even like what your day-to-day course and like structure looks like as you teach and you coach?
Yeah, absolutely. It is definitely something it's very interesting. It's not something I thought I was going to be doing, but it's something that I am incredibly thankful to have and be able to do. But essentially, the way it works as a strength coach here is we have a staff of 7 for 27 sports, which is a lot. We have a lot of sports, and most of our teams are oversized. We have usually expanded rosters than a traditional university. So we do have a lot on our plate from a sports standpoint, but also on top of that, we are required to teach PE courses for the regular cadet population. So you have your IC athletes, and then you have regular cadets. They have to meet PFT standards, so physical fitness test standards, AFT standards, aerobic fitness test standards, all for Air Force Academy, which will then transition into Big Air Force. So essentially, they have to take PE classes. We have electives, all kinds of sports. We have pickleball, tennis, softball. Like it's pretty cool actually. And then on top of that, we have required courses such as combatives, aquatics, water survival, basic swimming. And then we also have a course called physical development, where a lot of us strength coaches find ourselves teaching. So really what it is teaching regular cadets basically how to take care of themselves from a health standpoint, how to program, and then overall how to train for their AFT and PFT tests. A lot of these cadets they're very brilliant, very bright. Some of them may or may not have had background in the past, whether that is a PE class or training. So it's up to us to implement the tools that they need in order to improve on those things. And in the long run, it just benefits their career as an officer. So really, we have to kind of split our difference between what we're doing, and it kind of works out by nature here at the academy. Typical morning, there's only a couple teams that have morning waivers that can even train in the morning. I was at Alabama State prior to this, and I would be done with 3 teams by 9 o'clock. So like I'd be done with 3 teams, and I got the rest of the day to program, meet with coaches, and then I'd be out for football practice at night. So it was very that's kind of how it was structured in my previous position. But here, I am lucky to have a couple of the morning teams, but it's usually one team in the morning, usually from 6 o'clock to 7, and then I have nothing in athletic wise until about 2:30. So in between that time is actually when we teach PE courses. So PE course is usually about an hour and 15 minutes. We actually developed the curriculum for physical development, which is pretty cool. It's all science based, comes right out of the CSCS textbook. So we're giving them science backed information. And overall, it's not what I came here for specifically, but I absolutely love it. It's part of the reason why I want to be here. You get to work with regular cadets, and they're great people, especially when you have someone that hasn't had that background before. They've never touched a weight before, and they're required to do physical stuff. Taking them in 8 lessons and seeing improvement on just their back squat is it's pretty cool actually. So definitely something I enjoy doing here.
No, that's really cool. It's interesting, like to kind of see the differences between like how West Point does it, how the Naval Academy does it, and now how Air Force does it. Like I've spoken to people that are at all the different service academies, and there's a lot of similarities between the two, but there's some differences as well. But no, it's really cool how the course is kind of designed, and luckily for you guys, you were able to actually put a stamp on it too, and form it in like your own specific and mold it in a way. And it sounds too like it's constructed almost like what we would use as an internship or like volunteer curriculum too, where they're under the bar, they're learning about the physiology behind it. But the really cool part about it is, especially like knowing this from the military side, like you touched on it, like you're giving them the tools to be successful and train themselves and like understand their own health. And as cadets right now, that's important, but it's even more when they get like out into the fleet and now they're in charge of a bunch of enlisted, and like they're commanders in their own right, and they actually have to be officers and kind of make sure that their juniors are actually doing the right things, which is super important too, because like you said, that's going to impact them for the rest of their life. It's going to impact their military career in a very big way. And I'm sure you guys don't take that lightly when you start putting this course together.
No, absolutely not. It's we really put our heart and soul into it, and I'm very blessed to be around staff, like other coaches and staff that really care about it. So we're all involved in creating this curriculum for physical development. We've actually created a whole nother course that's advanced physical development. So it just kind of bridges the gap, goes into more of the programming. I'm actually the course director for that course. And being in charge of that, I've had incredible help putting that stuff together. So we're teaching some people that have really only done maybe physical development. The first section is the only training they've ever had. And then we take them into the advanced course and we're teaching them how to clean. Like, it's pretty cool. And the cool thing is the warm-up's the same. So we teach them a solid warm-up. It's actually the same warm-up that they get in basic training. It's actually the same warm-up that they do in squadron PT. So we have a bunch of people on staff right now. We're putting our stamps everywhere at this place. And it's going to be really cool to see how it all pays off in the long run. But it is something that I think everybody here takes pride in, especially the strength staff. Like, that's what we came here for. It's regular cadets, but it's coaching. It's coaching.
Right. Yeah, it's no small feat that what you guys have done, because I'm sure there's a lot of hoops you had to jump through, a lot of different things you had to go to get that curriculum approved, because you're adding a course to like the cadets 4-year military academic training in general. Like that's a lot to do. So I mean, hats off to you guys. That's awesome that you guys get to lead it, but not only not be like forced to teach something that's maybe out of your realm. You guys actually get to instruct it, but instruct something that you guys created. So no, that's really cool. I want to touch on now. So like, obviously the other side of what you guys do, you get to be a coach still. Like, you're training varsity, like Division I varsity athletes. And yeah, it's a little different being in a service academy, because military and like academics, they're balancing all those things. So sometimes athletics is like third or fourth or wherever on that list of things to do. But they're still athletes, and they're still high level athletes. I know we played each other in the Mountain West when I was at Fresno. That's where we kind of met. So yeah, you've got some dudes on the wrestling team, of course, man. So yeah, who do you kind of work with, and how has that kind of progressed in your time at the Air Force Academy? Is it any different than your time when you've been at different universities in terms of training?
Oh yeah, it's incredibly different. I was at Alabama State prior to this, and I coached under Coach Medgar Harrison, another one of like my mentors, and dude taught me a lot. And I remember leaving that place. I ended up getting the job here, and I was like, man, if I can coach at Alabama State, I can coach anywhere. I absolutely loved it, but I was like, I can coach anywhere. And I get here, and it is the polar opposite for good and for bad. Is the polar opposite, and it's definitely been an adjustment. Like I couldn't come in, I think I did, but I came in with the same mindset, and it's like you gotta adapt to what's going on here. And once you figure it out, like it is probably one of the most rewarding things you can do. I mean, same thing when I was at Alabama State. You get in with all these ideas of how it's going to go, and you realize things don't always work like that. And once you figure it out, and once you figure out like how, like we talked about, how to motivate your athletes and how to fit into a program, like it's incredible. It's the most fulfilling thing ever. So realistically here, I think the biggest difference is just like lack of time. Like you said, they have three things going on. And if we're teaching PE in the mornings, only some teams get morning time vouchers. Just about all of our teams train between 2 and 6 p.m. So it gets pretty tight. We're blessed to have great facilities, and we have all the tools that you could imagine, and we make it work. But it does get tight, so that's where we have to get creative, and we have to be super dialed into to what we're doing. Um, so it is pretty cool. Most athletes are going to be called student athletes. And I really think the academy does a good job, or at least our athletes, do a good job of being student athletes. Like they care about their grades. It matters to them. And that is a real admirable quality because, I did well in school, but that wasn't necessarily me. I wanted to play football. So I admire them for that. And then the best part of it is they are military. Like they take that even to another level, and they're doing stuff that you just can't believe that you have the opportunity to coach them to do. I was coaching one of my soccer players over summer, and she sends me a video of her flying a plane. I'm like, that's insane. So they have bigger callings, which it does can make it difficult to get some of the things in that we want to get in. But I think if we have to learn to navigate around those things, and it makes it even more worth it. It makes it even more fulfilling. It pushes you as a coach, and then overall, you're just incredibly proud of your athletes. It's hard to beat.
Yeah, that's super unique. There's not many places where you're going to get that image from one of your athletes. It's
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. You kind of alluded to the fact like it's the big thing that most people in athletics, especially collegiate athletics, like time is always an issue. Usually when you're not at a service academy, you're at one of the regular, quote unquote, regular colleges or universities, you're always trying to fight for time with the sport coaches. At least at the service academy, it's like you're allocated this amount of time, and there's really no leeway. Like classes are classes at this time. They have general PT time for everybody that's on base at this time. Team practice times are this. Like there's no leeway when it comes to that. So how do you kind of manage all those different stressors and stuff and obligations they have, because you're not able to really make those switches? Does military life ever really interfere with what they're doing on the field, or is that kind of taken out of your hands and you can just focus on when they get to me, I can make the adjustments, but when you're here, it's time to train?
yeah. I think yes and no. I think sometimes it does get in the way, and sometimes it goes hand in hand. And when I say it gets in the way, I think it's more so from the stress on the athletes, or the amount of perceived what of what they have on their plate. So I think as a coach, it's, we got to help manage that, to a degree. And if that's one thing we can manage, I think we get the best out of our athletes. And definitely we lose so much time here, but I think it also allows us the opportunity to be as consistent as possible. Because things are regimented. You know that you're not going to get a morning team, or if you do get a morning slot, you're not going to miss training in the morning. You're not going to take a day off when you know that when it's, you go outside and the sky's perfect and everything's going right, like you were gonna attack that day. So it gives you opportunities to be consistent in an inconsistent environment. And the teams that I have and that I've seen here that are the most successful are the ones that do that. They're very consistent. So that way, when something comes up, or we have a military training, or they've been out eating MREs or something, because that happens sometimes. They have a training and they'll get fed an MRE, or sometimes there'll be a gap when they eat. And if we've been consistent as a program, I can sacrifice that day. I'm like, got it. I think it might be better for us to back off today. And we can do that because we've been intentful and we've been consistent when we can be. And I think when you spell it out to the athletes like that, is the intent piece, it definitely helps. When we have a light day and my athletes want to like go hard they want to be sore, they want to sweat. I'm like, no, you need to relax. This is my intent. I need you at a 50 today because I need you at 100 this weekend. So I think explaining to them what the intent of the day is can definitely help. Maybe we only have 20 minutes to train. It's going to be the most intentful 20 minutes that we've ever had. So I think when you slow things down and you explain that to them, you get a little bit better buy-in from them on those types of things.
Right. No, that's a great point. Actually communicating those things with the athletes and understanding that we have a very select amount of time. So what we put into this program, what we do on these days has to be very purposeful, and there has to be complete intent behind it. And I think they would settle for nothing less. There's no room for error when you're flying a jet. There's no room for error when you're playing sports. Like, that's the difference between winning or losing. Ultimately, it's a bigger sacrifice when it comes to military training, and they're trying to prepare for those sort of things as their cadets. But it's a great kind of area and place for them to kind of fail and learn those things before it becomes super difficult when they're actually out and they're officers at that point in time. When it comes to like some of those military like obligations, like being in the field, like obviously like eating MREs does a work on your body from the insides out. How up to date are you with that? Like, how in the loop are when some of those things come about? Or is that information the coaches pass down to you, the athletes kind of like make you aware? Like, how do you have to program that on the fly, or is that kind of built into their schedule, almost just like games and out of season conference like play and stuff is built into their schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say most of it is built in. So a lot of it we do see coming. So that allows us to be that allows us to plan ahead. It definitely doesn't allow us to be perfectly linear, but it allows us to plan ahead and know when things are coming. So you can get a good idea of when your weeks to go full send are going to be, and then you get a good idea of like, hey, this is going to be a rough week for them. Maybe this is a good taper week or something like that, or I work in 2 taper weeks. So you do get a good bit of information before we go. Sometimes things do come up, and to to our defense, like sometimes we need to mobilize quick. Stuff happens, and that's part of what like. It sucks sometimes as a coach, but like I want our military to be able to mobilize quick, think on the fly, and adjust. Like it's not a bad thing for us to be able to do those, and we just gotta make sure we execute those things right. And I also think too, it's part of the reason why I like teaching PE classes to the regular cadets. I get contact points with just the average population, and through coaching, through talking to them, speaking, making jokes with them, because sometimes this is a little bit of they get come down and lift. They don't have to be out marching or in their blue uniforms. They look super crisp. They don't, always like dressing up when it's hot like that, but they look sharp But they get to come down in their PE gear, shorts, t-shirt. So we do try to make it a little fun for them. But just through talking to them, I find out so much more about the academy just from those conversations. I get to see what their training was. So we have 40 squads. Those squads are in charge of training. So one squadron might have worked out, another squadron might have done land nav. So it can be variable, but I can find out, okay, yeah, Squadron 23 kind of went through it today. I know kind of how to approach those athletes or those cadets. So, I mean, I think definitely PE kind of gives us more insight to what's going on with them too. Our athletes some of them are too tough. Some of them want to come in and act like they haven't been phased. And it's like, I kind of need to know. I need to know what your level is. So it is good to kind of get those insights in other places as well.
Yeah, that's a tall task, but it's cool to see that you guys are actually organized with it and you're in the loop. And obviously, after being there for the amount of time you have, you've picked up a lot of like the lingo and the acronyms and everything. It's just from having daily conversations with your athletes and then the rest of the cadets that are coming in for those PE classes, which is cool. I know you said it too in the beginning, like most service academy, everybody has to be involved in physical education in some way, shape, or form. I know varsity athletes that are playing Division I, like they're afforded some opportunities that aren't there for the rest of like the cadets in terms of like that kind of overlapping. But because you have so many, like you're overexpanded on all your teams. Like I think your wrestlers, what do you have, like 50 or 60?
We've reduced a little bit, but we had 55 at one point. Like we get a lot of them.
Exactly. But those, I want to talk about this because I always thought this was interesting. Like, yeah, your facilities are enormous because everybody's training the same time. Like your coaching staffs are generally the same as what everybody else has. Yeah, there's more people that like are around the academy that can probably help, and there's volunteers and positions like that. But generally, like even if you just take wrestling, there's only a certain amount of guys that are really traveling. There's only a certain amount of guys that are actually going to be competing day in, day out, like normal. And then you have some non-travelers like normal, but then you have some other ones that probably will never travel. Some of them that'll probably never compete in their 4 years. Some of them maybe are just practice guys, but they're still on the team some way, shape, or form. How do you approach all those different kind of categories differently with all your sports, knowing that some of them are just kind of there and they have a bigger picture, like, hey, they're not going to go play pro. They're going into they're going to be officers after this. Or are you kind of treating them all exactly the same? Like you're a part of the team regardless what your role is. Like, how do you kind of approach that side of it? Because some of those guys, I'm sure everybody on the team is super competitive and they want to be the starter. Or do some of them realize like, hey, I know my position. I'm not gonna be playing in 4 years. Do you see that from them at all?
Yo, yeah, absolutely. I do think so. I definitely approach every athlete as I want to make them better. I don't care if they're sitting on the bench. I don't care if they never even go on a travel trip. Like, and I think part of that is I want the best for them, and then I really love what I do. So like, I love when I have three of my athletes had to stay back, and I get more one-on-one time with my athletes. I get to learn more about them. I get to invest more time in this person and get to develop them. So I think from player to player, I'm interested in developing every single person. As far as programming goes, I do program differently based on who isn't traveling. So my goal is that people don't travel. They're always developing. People that don't play, it's like with soccer. If you don't play a certain amount of minutes, hey, let's if we play 2 games in a week, that's a lot of minutes if you sat out. And that was everyone's highest load. So we got to go out and get a high load too. We got to keep you up to date with the rest of the team, and that does get very difficult. I think I'm sure that's at just about every school because athletes are competitive, and a lot of them are young. They might take those kind of things personal. They might let that get to them. They might let that demotivate them. So it can be tough trying to get that out of them. I think some athletes sell themselves short because they're angry or frustrated. They don't believe in themselves. And then other athletes like rise to it. Some of my like best weight room people never competed. And it's like I'm trying everything I can to get you guys to compete and get you, on the starting roster. And it's sometimes that's frustrating, but it's like, they're doing everything right, and someone like that does everything right, they keep their grades up, or they're good for the culture. Like, I will fight tooth and nail to have that person on any team. And then the ones that struggle a little bit more, I do think it's a conversation with them and trying to tell them, because they will tend to get frustrated, whether it's just with themselves or the coaching staff, wondering why they're not playing. Obviously, all those athletes go and meet with coaches, so they're giving them feedback. So my biggest thing is, all right, what coach tell you need to work on? What's coach's favorite drill? What does coach say that you are deficient in? Let's go run that drill. So I think it's kind of trying to coach them up on, this is an opportunity for you to catch up. The person in front of you is competing right now. They're not training. They're not developing. This is your time to close that gap. In worst case scenario, even though I have a lot of individual sports, there's team accolades. Each one of my wrestlers, they got 18th at NCAAs. Each one of my wrestlers can say they were part of that program. And so even with individual sports, if I'm better, if I just increase my level, I'm pushing the person in front of me. The person in front of me has got to work harder because I'm coming for their spot. So regardless if they do succeed or not, it makes everybody better. So I think that's, to that first question, is like, it's part of that culture that I believe in. I want everybody to want to get better. I want everybody to believe in the entire team, the entire unit, whether it's an individual sport or a team sport. I truly believe in that. I think that's a huge part of what makes a good program from top to bottom, starter to the person who might not ever compete. I think everybody's got to be firing all cylinders.
Yeah, that's from top to bottom, like you said. Like, you want everybody pulling in the same direction, and it's the difference between a really successful program and one that's like right on the cusp or kind of falters at different points in time. Like, you're going to see injuries during a season. You're going to see just people dealing with stress and dealing with ups and downs that inevitably happen. Not everybody's going to go undefeated. There's only one champion at the end of the year. So if your goal is to be the last one standing, everybody else is a failure at some point. So you're going to go through some of those adversities, and it's better when everybody that's maybe not in the starting lineup is challenging themselves and trying to be the best version of themselves and push the people ahead of them. And maybe they leapfrog them, and then it makes whoever got their spot taken fire them up even more to be competitive. And they should be welcoming to that, because you don't want to be just given the starter spot because you're a senior. You don't want to be just given it and have no competition behind you. A real competitor, I would say, doesn't want that.
Yeah.
The same as like when I go out and compete in like individual sports, I would rather have my best day and like come in last than have my worst day and come in first, because it does me no good to just like come home with a trophy that I didn't actually get to put like full effort into. And I'm sure that all your athletes and a lot of athletes out there would probably feel the same way deep inside.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's obviously had those seasons, had those games, and I obviously hate losing. Even I probably even hate losing more as a coach than when I was playing football. I had a very successful college career, but like, God, man, it just breaks my heart sometimes. But like, as much as it does, I'm incredibly proud of my athletes when I'm like, man, we balled out today. Like, they look good, and I can be proud of that, even though we still, we might have come up short. And again, that makes it worth it. You got to put out your best. We put out our best product today. I don't know what to tell y'all. That was great. So I enjoy that, even though it does suck to lose. It hurts to lose, but we do our best. You can't be too mad.
Yeah, I'm far removed from when I played, and watching, I feel more proud watching them play when they've like put on their best performance too. It's one thing too to be like stoked for them in the weight room, but it's cool too when they go out and they get to actually like compete against someone else. and they're enjoying themselves a lot more because that's what they came here to do versus be stuck in the dungeon with me all day.
Exactly.
Hey, so you work right now with gymnastics, wrestling, and soccer, which are they have some similarities to them, but there's a bunch of differences that end up going into probably how you program those teams. But I think the one thing that, in my perspective, those three sports especially do a lot of training, like quote unquote, when it comes to in practice. Like we know what wrestlers do all the time. Like they already have like many weight rooms. I know you guys even have a weight room in your own facility, but a lot of wrestling facilities incorporate as that as already as part of their conditioning and normal training. Gymnastics is very similar too, especially just the nature of the sport. And soccer, a lot of times, starts getting to that with some of the plyometric work and like relative body strength work and lunging patterns and stuff like that they do on the field. So we kind of touched on that before, you and me, before we started going, but I wanted to save it for this. How do you really avoid like double dipping with them and more so trying to complement what the coaches are already putting into practice as a strength coach?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's a really good question because obviously a lot of research and a lot of learning we learn about sports specificity, and that's something obviously there's a time and place for that, but here I've really learned like to be program specific. Like I can have all these ideas in my head, but it like what the coach is doing, what the program is doing is going to really dictate what I'm going to do with them. It's going to dictate what I'm allowed to do with them. It's going to dictate what I would like to do with them and what I believe in. So that by far dictates more of my programming than I would say what the actual sport is. Obviously, with sports, there's certain things we have to address, we have to attack. But it's like you said, it's the volume at practice. It's what coaches are implementing or coaches believing. Wrestling obviously is it's one of the craziest sports I've ever witnessed because they do so much. Those guys grind so hard. I have the utmost respect for them. A lot of those guys are gonna go off to be special forces. Like I got some psychopaths on my team, and it's awesome. Like I love those dudes. And they will run through a wall for you. That's what we dream of as a strength coach, which is great. But I'm like, that's a lot of power. If I tell them to do something, they will do it full send. So I think it's I have a really good relationship with Coach Sam Barber. So we talk just about every single day, but definitely every week. And I'm knowing what they're doing in practice. He believes in a very endurance-based aerobic team. We play at altitude, at like half of our duels. So he believes in that. So I got to figure out how does that work in with my program. So talking with them on what is our conditioning going to look like? Are we going to condition before lift or after lift? All right, coach, got it. If we condition before, these are the things that you're looking at in the lift. They might not squat as much. We might not get as much strength benefits, or maybe today's a power day. I care more about the endurance. Got it. No worries, coach. Full send. And it's that conversation where we can get on the same page. I know what coach believes in. I know what kind of program he wants. And then I can supplement and fit into what he's doing. And same thing with the other sports. I think it's interesting. I have both men and women's gymnastics. Very similar sports. Obviously, they have a little bit different events. And with the culture of those teams, with men's gymnastics, I'm doing a lot of jump land mechanics. That's the big thing that they want to focus on is jump land mechanics. I don't touch their upper body. They're doing a lot of that stuff in practice. We can sit here and say, all right, gymnast, sports specific. What do we need to train? We need to do some shoulder stabilization. We need to do all these things that we have these notions about. And then come and find out, like, coaches are doing that at practice. They have, they call it straps. The guys love it. They call it straps. And it's like gymnastics is so funny because when I think of condition, I'm a football player. I'm like, oh man, conditioning. Coach is breaking down a whistle. We probably got up downs, but their conditioning is like it's like a playground for me. It's high volume hypertrophy sets. They start off with 100 dips on the dip bar, and it's incredible. And then they do like some manual resisted, partner resisted, almost like isokinetic type movements. And that's their conditioning. So after they do all that, I'm not touching their upper body. So it's interesting to see those things, and the coaches do a good job of doing a lot of I guess what people would consider shoulder prehab. So they do a lot of like shoulder stability work. I've actually gone to practice and watched them implement those, and seen it and been like, hey, wrestling tends to have shoulder injuries. I'm actually might do this with wrestling. So I've actually used different sports like their strengths to actually complement some of my other sports with just by seeing what they implement. So I thought that was pretty interesting with having, I guess, the diverse but similar population that I have. So yeah.
No, that's cool too to like see that you're actually able to use some of the stuff from other sports and complement another one. I know that was one big thing when I was at Fresno too. Baseball coaches love talking to some of the quarterbacks and see how they were actually performing and how some of their arm care drills, and they kind of went back and forth and had conversations with it. So it was awesome to see that, and it's cool that you're doing it too. Most people can get really carried away and
Yeah.
copy those things exactly, but if you're able to see it in the context of what the sport there is, and then you're able to bridge the gap and translate it over to a different type of sport, then that's golden, and that's cool to see. But I think like the underlying tone that comes from what you were talking about really is your coaches are super communicative, and that comes from you initiating those conversations, I'm sure, as well. But they seem super educated and on board with what you're doing, complementing each other, and like they're knowledgeable in what they want to do for their training, but they also have some knowledge in what sports performance looks like as well. And I'm sure that it's probably, you won't be able to prove it, but I'm sure it's probably comes down from some of the curriculum and the PE stuff that you've been teaching the cadets. Educating them has probably come back and it's educated the coaches as well too. So I can't prove it, but I mean, a more well-educated coach
Yeah.
and athlete definitely makes your job easier too, and it makes you put a little bit more effort into what you're doing. So that's, I mean, that's my outside perspective.
Yeah. No, and I think you're absolutely right. My women's gymnast coach, Jennifer Green, head coach, she actually teaches a lot of physical development with me. So it's so cool getting to do that because she sees what we're implementing, and I find her like just it's the probably one of the best things I think a head coach can do, just upholding my standards. I think we go out of our like I want to uphold my head coach's standards, but she knows what I believe in, and she will like uphold it very robustly, and it's awesome to see. And it's like it's just nice knowing that your coaches believe in you, have your back, and that allows for the communication.
Definitely. Hey, so we kind of talked about gymnastics training a lot. Like obviously that's one of your sports, but you end up doing a lot of like calisthenics, gymnastics movements and stuff in your own training now that you're done with football. Um, what are you doing like for your own training? I know it's a little bit all over the place. It looks like it's stuff from your team's programs. Are you using some of the programs that you designed for them into your own training to like kind of see if it's ready for them, or what's kind of really driving your training and competitive spirit right now?
Yeah, it is weird. It's hard to describe. I'm all over the place for sure, and sometimes I'm asking myself exactly what it is. Um, but no, it's the funny thing is I think that's partly why I got put with gymnastics when I got here. I mean, I just took on women's gymnastics last year, but I was initially with men. I was told that they stopped my Instagram, so but what I'd like to do a lot of body weight training, which I think fits in really well at the Air Force Academy. All my athletes have to take the physical fitness test, they have to take the AFT. So even with women's soccer, to a huge degree, we're doing a lot of body weight stuff. They actually just scored really high on their physical fitness test, and I know coaches will talk about it like just about all of them can knock out pull-ups. They can rep them out, which isn't, from what I'm told, isn't always typical, and that's something that they're super proud of. But I do take a lot of what I've done and how I've trained and implemented it with all my athletes, just because it's so complementary of the modality that I like to train with. I love training body weight, for myself. It feels good. It's something that I feel like came way more natural to me than training for traditional football training, which is what I did for all the way through high school and through college. So I kind of adapted my body to be a little bit different based on what I just enjoy. And I like to try stuff out. I experiment all the time with workouts. I tell my athletes I would never make you do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. So I make sure that I run every single block, every single exercise that I implement with them, I have done at some point, even up to the conditioning. I've done the women's soccer conditioning packet just about every summer, just so I can experience it myself and know for sure what they're going through. Because I do think for me that's important. I want to get that feedback for myself. Um, but yeah, I definitely put a lot of effort into my own training, and it does vary a lot. I, by nature, for some reason, really like to run. It goes against all my goals. I'm always trying to gain weight and bulk up, but for some reason, I really enjoy running. And if I could just run and reach my goals, I'd be perfectly happy. So I run as well. I do. I've done ultras, and I enjoy. I've had to back off since I've had two kids now. I don't have the time to go on a 3 hour run, but that's where I can just turn off. I don't have to think a whole lot. It's not a complicated movement, left foot, right foot when I'm going the distance that I'm going. So I just get to turn off. So yeah, it's definitely all over the place. Not typical for what I did when I was training for football.
No, but it's kind of cool to have a fresh perspective and something different because it's hard for I've seen for people to let go or pick up something new after they found something they really love. Like football is inevitably going to end for someone if they make it to high school senior, if they make it through college and they can make it professional. No matter what, it's going to end at some point. It's hard for someone to find something that they found just as much, if not more, passion and like desire for as they did with that one sport they loved after it's done. So it's cool to see that you've been able to do ultras, you've been able to do all this body weight training and like advance into your program. And it's even cooler that it's reflected in what the athletes are doing because you go out and experiment and test with it all the time. And that's a huge thing of the show, like finding coaches to make sure that they're doing their own training. They know what it feels like firsthand experience before they go out and put it into the world or they give it to an athlete. It's what we preach to all our interns, but it's cool to see that you keep doing that like yourself. And it's hard to balance running. I found out like to be big and like balance running, or maybe I'm just so bad at running that like I use big as an excuse, but it's cool that you put that in there. I'm still trying to figure out how to shut my mind off more. I know it's left foot, right foot, but when I start thinking left, right, like I'm in my own head. So hats off to you for doing that too. When it comes to like the AFT stuff for the Air Force, I know we talked about like programming that in for the athletes. It's probably structured in there. You know when that day's coming. But what specifically does the Air Force test, and like what are some of the like bare minimum standards that a cadet has to go through? And are pretty much all your athletes should be prepared for that. It's just when it falls during the season, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the AFT is the aerobic fitness test. So that's a mile and a half. And it's scored out of 500 points. And there's a male time and a female time. I can't remember the exact middle number off the top of my head, but scoring 250 out of 500 would be a passing grade. So they have to pass that. If not, that cadet will have to go to reconditioning. So they'll basically it's kind of cool actually, whether they like it or not. Like it's kind of cool. They have Recondo reconditioning facility where they actually implement training programs for those cadets. So even though they might be upset that they didn't make it, like let's get better. So they go to reconditioning if they don't make that time. And then the physical fitness test it's supposed to be like the anaerobic fitness test. So they start off with pull-ups. And again, this whole test is out of 500. They start off with pull-ups. The max for the guys is 21, and the max for the ladies is 8, I believe. After that, they do a long jump. I don't remember the max of those off the top of my head, but they do a long jump, and then that's followed by sit-ups, push-ups, and then a 600-yard run. So each of those events are 100 points, and essentially you got to get over a 250. If you end up scoring a 500, it's a big deal, and you get a T-shirt and everything like that. You're part of the 500 club. 400 for both of those is validation, so that means you did pretty solid on it. So every cadet will have to take those tests at least once a year.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't realize that's what it evolved at. And but it's cool that it's kind of a competitive thing that happens around the academy too. And everybody at some point in time is getting ready for that. Even if you're taking a pickleball class your junior year, you got to do the PFT and AFT at some point.
Yep. Exactly.
Nice.
And I will be the first to admit I try to pin my athletes against each other. I tell them, like, you guys, hey, soccer, you got to be better in wrestling. Wrestling, you got to be better in gymnastics. Like, I try to push them I want them to be the best team. You know, all my sports they have really good relative strength. And I'm like, we got to be the big dogs. We got to take top in the entire university. So I do kind of pin them against each other, but they go at it. You know, it is tough, but I've been blessed with having some sports that really take that serious, and it's good to have.
No, that's cool. I mean, it kind of goes to show the same thing we were talking about within a singular team like wrestling or gymnastics or soccer. Like the bottom is trying to push the top. Everybody's trying to succeed and be successful and push the person above and below them and be competitive. But it's even cooler when like a university or a program in general, like an academic department or an athletic department, everybody is competing against each other. And it's all for like the common good. It's all for like ultimate success of the school or of like your guys' program. So that, yeah, pin them up against each other and see who's going to be the champion at the end. I'd be interested to see who comes out on top out of those three.
Yeah, I would say soccer. I think their average. I'm gonna brag about them a little bit. Their average was a 478, I believe. It's like a 470 or something like that.
Oh wow!
Average out of 500. A lot of them, I'd say a good portion of. I had 8 people get 500, so they maxed it. So they did a really good job. I can't remember off the top of my head what the next highest was out of my teams, but all of them performed. But that's kind of the culture I want for my teams, and not even that, just the academy too. Everyone might not be super pumped about it, but like outside looking in, you know, I'm just a civilian, and that looks cool. And I wish that they would realize those things sometimes. Like, it's cool that that's something your entire for us, it's an academy, but for everyone else, the entire university does that. How many universities in the nation can you go to and everybody has a test like that? We teach them how to skip lesson 1 in PE. We teach them how to skip, to do an A skip. You can't walk on most universities in the nation and pick a random student and ask them to skip. So like, I'm proud of that. I want them to be as proud of that as I am.
That's the military for you. It's a crawl, walk, run mentality, and the basics done really extremely well is what's going to win it over. And I don't know why people tend to skip that first lesson, like not skip as in like actually like physically skip, but actually just like throw that chapter away and try to get to like the end. It's cool to see that, because the same as relative body strength, that's one thing that seems to get thrown away when you go to a weight room and you have all these toys and plates to play with. Like everybody wants to do that, and you guys are making sure, whether it be a byproduct of what just military training is and having to do the PFT and the AFT, but I would say that it was probably in your mindset, even if you weren't forced to do it, that relative body strength, like having control of your body weight, like kinesthetic awareness, that is always going to be a part of the program. And lifting and all that other stuff is going to be secondary. We have to be ready for this, which is super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It does go hand in hand. And, you know, we're doing our best to make our stamp on it and continue to improve it and continue to that's the culture we want. So, you know, that's where we're headed.
Awesome. Hey, you said it yourself. Some of the women's gymnastics athletes were stalking your Instagram so that you could kind of see what your training was like, and you're like, oh, I want him as a strength coach. Like, he understands like what gymnastics is. which is probably a huge reason why. Not like you're a great coach too, but like that definitely helps. Have you seen it in your own instance that athletes are a little bit more bought in when you're training yourself? Like, how has that helped influence or build buy-in a little bit quicker that they know, hey, like Coach Taylor is actually like grinding himself too, and he's working every single day.
Yeah. So that was the staff. That was the other strength coaches that stalked me. They stalked me, and I didn't find out this out until about a year in that they were looking at my Instagram page, which makes sense. You want to check on like who you're hiring, right? But it's funny you say that though. Like a lot of them do. They'll come back like, Coach, I saw what you did. Like that's so cool. It's like my athletes will come up and they'll be impressed with some of that stuff, and I'm like, that's cool. Like what you guys do is cool is even better because sometimes they will want to do some of the stuff that I participate in, and I'm like, this isn't. Some of it might not be conducive to you got a game this week, so let's not do that. But I do think it does create some sort of buy-in. Like they do want to know that you can walk the walk. You're not just telling them to do something blindly. So yeah, they'll see a lot of the stuff I do. It's actually going through a cycle right now with wrestling. I programmed way different than I have in the past, changed some stuff up. I got a lot of guys that we had NCAAs and Big 12s, and they have had a couple of down weeks, and gave them 2 weeks off, and now we're back up training again. So we were starting off with a hypertrophy block, and I kind of came after them a little bit, and again, just so I could feel it, I'm going through the cycle with them. Well, I'm posting as we're going through this cycle through the weeks. I'm posting my set to my Instagram, and the guys will come in the next day and be like, Coach, I can't believe you did that. Like, I got to hit that today. And so they'll ask me, okay, all right, Coach, what did you hit today on squat? What did you hit today on bench? So it is kind of cool to have that connection to where they know that you're, whether you're a baller at it or not, you're willing to do it. I think that's the biggest thing is they know that you're willing to just go that extra mile with them. I've done the AFT with my athletes before. Just because, if they get anxiety, I'm like, hey, shoot, I'll run it with you. Like, let's do it. I'm not even ready, but I'll find a way. So I do think you get some buy-in that way. Whether they see that you can walk the walk, or it's just they know that you're willing to even do it with them. You're willing to, I shouldn't say suffer, but you're willing to grow with them, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's super cool. I think they see it and they understand like what you're trying to do, even if it's like maybe the number to them, like the weight on the bar is like out of their reach, they think in their mindset, or just like they don't think that they have the capacity and ability to do it. It's all relative to them. And I think you do a great job by showing them that you can do it even if you're not prepared for it. I mean, you put yourself in position that you could be athletic. You could go on an ultra. It might not be your best time, or you
Yeah.
might not be really prepared for it, but because you're doing so many different things that complement it, you're prepared in some sort of way, and you're willing to at least put your neck on the line and try it. And I think that helps them more so than anything, is just kind of get past some of those mental barriers they have, or maybe those like deep seated like self-doubt that they have. And those are huge, whether it be in their athletic career or their academic career, and like what carries over them in military life. They're going to have to be confident in positions, especially when you're an officer, to lead others. And if you're not confident in yourself, and like your own decision making process is going to suffer when you're trying to delegate or dictate and carry out orders for others. Like that this is huge for them. And even though it's in an athletic environment, though having that confidence there is going to translate over to what they do in the civilian sector and in the military side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that. I like that term confidence because, but when I go back to my training, with my father-in-law Sterling Joseph, it was like that's the biggest thing he gave me was confidence. And I remember it to this day. He was like, "I want you to walk on the field and you have full. No one's gonna mess with you. You're gonna be the big dog on the field. You're gonna be more fit than everybody. You're gonna be stronger than everybody. And whether I was or wasn't, like I believed it. I graduated high school at 155 trying to play college football. And I remember showing up day one trying to, tackle a grown man. And yeah, I might have got ran over a little bit, but like I sent it, and that's probably one of the things I was best at was being like a run stopper and being a support defensive back. But like that's how I carried myself. I was confident about it, and I just think through however many years, having that confidence as a strength coach is important. That I can go into a room full of all these wrestlers, and some of those guys are putting up crazy numbers, and like I think to be a leader, like you have to show a leader amongst leaders. These guys are going to go out and be officers. You got guys winning all kinds of accolades. Like you got to be confident around all those guys, and when you show them that, and when you show them that you're willing to do it, I think that they're willing to follow that, and not only that, but let them know it's okay to be like that. It's okay to
No,
have that confidence.
yeah, definitely. No, leader amongst leaders. That's a unique position that's you kind of find yourself in too. Like, I think military does a good job, and I'm sure the academy, it sounds like all those athletes are doing the same thing. Like, even though they're super smart, they're well respected, like they're great athletes at what they do, they know that you're the subject matter expert in what you're doing. Like when it comes to the classroom, like you're teaching physical education, like you're the one leading that classroom, and they're there. They know their time is to follow. Like when you're in the weight room, the same thing. Like you're the expert, and they're coming to you to learn and kind of improve, and they're going to take that and move on. Like you touched on a little bit, like in your opinion, like what really helped you kind of develop confidence as a coach? Because you're in a group full of intimidating people. Like I don't know if you view them that way. Maybe that's one way you kind of avoid it, and like have some confidence when you just forget like who you're teaching. But you're also like kind of outnumbered, like 55 wrestlers at a time, like a lot of soccer players at one time, like, and it's just you sometimes by yourself. Like how do you remain confident or build confidence as a coach when you're around some really high caliber athletes and respectable people?
Yeah, that for me has definitely been a journey, and trying to figure that out might be difficult. But I think for sure, I built that confidence on the field when I was obviously training with my father-in-law. But as a coach, I really had to develop that, and I think from my previous boss, Coach Medgar Harrison, I think he provided a lot of that learning curve for me. So I volunteered there for a year, and then finally got put on with them for another year after that. And when I say it was one of the most intensive like jobs or careers I've ever done, like he's a very detail oriented guy. And again, kind of the same concept as my father-in-law. Like he was hard. He was a tough guy to work for, and he expected a lot, but like the level of detail that he made me adhere to, it just made me better. And it made me feel like because he would put me in charge. Even as a volunteer, I was in charge of the entire football team sometimes. And it's like, all right, so I think just through getting those repetitions, getting the experience, and then not only that, like him believing in me, even when I had worked a 16-hour day, had to come back and again apply the level of detail. Dude always believed in me. And so I'm like, man, if he believes in me, like there must be something there, because this guy is so detail oriented. He's so anal. Like if he believes in me, there's something there. So I think through repetitions of that, and then coming here and getting repetitions as a PE instructor, we work with very cerebral students. They are so knowledgeable, and sometimes like they're gonna ask you really good questions a lot of the time. They're gonna ask you very cerebral questions that are highbrow. They're thinking on a different level than I'm used to thinking. And I went to school for some of this stuff, and they want to know the science, they want to know the physics. So just through having conversations like that, I think being put outside of my comfort level, doing stuff like this, I've never done a podcast before. So I think just getting up in front of people, my athletes have asked me, I'm very good at going on rants. when we're not, like it's not pregame, or maybe we're done working out and I'll just go on a rant and I get in my zone and I say something and they're feeling it. So then later in the week when we're at game, like, coach, you got to hype us up again. I'm like, I wasn't trying to hype you guys up. I was just talking. But then they see that energy and they believe in me. They want me to talk to them before the game. I talked to gymnastics before they went out for the NCAA tournament, and it was just like, they believe in me enough. Like they believe in me. I'm good. I obviously got something I can do. I can give them something. So I don't know if that's the answer, but I do feel like it's the people around me, it's the experiences I've been, it's the reps I've got, and it's how they make me feel about myself. Like it gives me all the power I need, all the confidence I need in the world.
That's awesome that as much impact as you have on them, like they give it back to you like twice over, and they feed into each other, which is even cooler too, because I've been on those same rants before, and I like feel like I black out and I don't know what I'm saying, and they're like, whoa. And I remember one time I tried to rehearse, like I wrote down some stuff that I wanted to say, and I don't remember, I didn't read any of it off. I just went, and it all comes from the heart, and it's cool to see that they it just feeds off each other, and someone that's passionate and dedicated to what they do, it comes second nature. It's completely natural, and it's cool because the recipe of success, just like for you, is getting the reps, having an opportunity to lead, get outside your comfort zone a little bit, try something new, and then build some confidence in that stuff. So that's awesome. And to hear that your mentors believed in you enough and kept letting you do that. That's a great lesson that anybody in that position should be able to do. Let someone run wild, learn by making some mistakes, and just let them keep getting reps, and then look where you'll be in a couple of years. So great. Awesome, man. Hey, like any good session, any good training session, we end the show with the finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and overtime at the end. So you can go rapid fire with these, or you could take your time on any of them. But you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do it. So first one I got for you: biggest influence in the strength and conditioning profession, and favorite athlete growing up.
Oh man, well, definitely my father-in-law. I know, um, just been with him for so long, and just the time I've spent with that man and taking me in, even though I was dating his daughter, and as scary as that was and uncomfortable as that was, the dude has influenced me so much, and I admire that guy to the fullest. So Sterling Joseph, definitely my biggest mentor in the strength and conditioning world. So yeah, what was the second question? I'm sorry.
What is your favorite athlete growing up?
Oh my gosh, Brian Dawkins.
All right. Hey,
Absolute menace.
that's a good one. Okay. Hey, so when you're not coaching, you're not training in the facility or in your garage, what are some of your hobbies outside of the weight room walls?
Yeah, I mean, playing with my kids, it's really cool having. I got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm getting to relive my childhood through them, with them, and that's probably by far the funnest thing I've ever experienced. So that's definitely number one on my list. On top of that, I definitely am a movie junkie. I like scary movies, stuff like that. I've been getting into woodworking as well. I like to make stuff, so getting my feet wet with woodworking.
All right. Hey, so if you weren't coaching in the strength field, what do you think you would be doing as a career? And if you could go pro in any sport, what would it be?
Oh man, that's a good one. I couldn't see myself doing anything else, to be honest with you. Um, some manual labor, something physical where I can just work and do manual labor. I know it doesn't sound super fun, but I find that as like a release to me. I don't care what it is, just manual labor. Um, and then second part again. I'm
If you
sorry.
No, you're good. If you're going pro in any sport of
Uh,
your choosing, what would you pick?
and it's that's a tough one too. I did enjoy football, and obviously that's probably on most high school and college players' minds. But I haven't worked with wrestling, man. I do think that'd be a cool sport to have the opportunity to do, and especially nowadays, there's so much success with that. You got guys competing in the Olympics. You got guys that are doing the same thing and going to WWE, signing these contracts. Like I admire the heck out of that sport. So I would go ahead and say wrestling, even
Oh
though
yeah.
there's no chance now, but it'd be pretty cool.
Hey, you never know. And what? UFC just bought WWE too, so it's about to get
Yeah,
super rowdy.
it
Hey,
is.
hey, so setting up an ideal training day for yourself, what is blasting on the speakers and what is your favorite post-training meal?
Oh man, definitely some sort of Wu-Tang Clan or like RZA, and something like that. Blasting, like like would you say productive post-training meal or just like something to eat after?
You can go like best cheat meal or you
Yeah.
can go what is typical, but everybody wants to hear the cheat meal.
I mean, I've crushed some PRs off of Panda Express before. As effective as that is, that's probably my one of my go-to like cheap meals. I would say that.
All right. Hey, so last one I got for you for overtime. What is either your favorite under the bar memory or favorite coaching memory that you've had so far?
Yeah, I would say good coaching memory for sure. That's it probably a little bit deeper one, but there was, I lost a teammate 2 years ago, or about a year and a half ago, and it was in season. And I just remember it was, I found out the night before, and the next day I came in, and like my athletes were just like everything was perfect. They were all on point. And I think I had just about all my teams. It was a busy day. I had all my teams that day. But I just remember specifically like everybody just executed. But not only that, they were just all like together as a team. And I just remember just being in a weird place and just seeing that. And I was like, man, this is freaking cool. Like these cadets, these athletes have no idea the kind of relationships they're making. Like that made a difference to me. And it was cool that I could witness them forming the same relationships, that I had with this particular teammate. And it definitely lifted me up. So I think that was probably actually my best memory.
No, that's awesome. It's unfortunate that like stuff like that happens, and especially when it comes so close, like it hits you at home like that. Because I mean, most of these athletes don't realize that their teammates, some of them are going to be lifelong friends. They're gonna grow old with them. They're going to be neighbors, or they're going to have those connections forever. And I mean, they don't know it in that moment. And
Exactly.
to be removed from it, like you try, like not to be the old grungy, grumpy strength coaches, but to like try to tell them like, hey, we're being serious. Like this is something super impactful that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. And they shrug it off, but like it really is important. And that's awesome that it's a memory that it's as unfortunate as it is, like the situation and circumstance, that it's not just like a championship. It's not just like those things are great.
Yeah.
Um, but something that like solidifies like what you're doing as a career, like your passion, and like just see something all click together on one specific day. Like when you're just kind of stepping back to see everything just click and be executed awesome by your athletes. That's really cool, man. It's awesome to hear that. So I'm happy for you, man. That's cool.
And I appreciate it.
Hey, so for anybody that's got any follow-up questions, wants to reach out to you or kind of see the odd things that you got going on in your training environment, whatever, however many plates you're trying to put on your body to do pull-ups and stuff like that, where can they follow along for you? Where can they get a hold of you if they got any follow-up stuff?
Yeah, so on Instagram. That's probably where I'm most active social media wise, but it's Dad Ceps, because I'm a father now, but it's DADCEPS. That's probably the really the only social media I'm really active on consistently. And then aside from that, like I guess yeah, feel free to email me. It's Bryce BRYCE Tay 13 at gmail.com. That's my personal email. So yeah, feel free to email me there if you guys would like.
Awesome, man. Hey, well, I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been great to catch up. So I'm glad we got to share this with the audience and hear a little bit more about your training background and coaching and everything you got going on. So thanks, man.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, man. It's been a good experience, and I'm looking forward to staying in contact with you and continuing to grow. So appreciate you.
Yeah, of course, man. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, sounds good.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.